Good morning. Thank you so much for taking a coffee break with me this morning. My name is Jacqueline. I work at North Range as an early childhood mental health consultant. And so what that is part of my job is providing counseling services for young children and their families, usually under the age of 6. But I also provide early childhood consultation services to child cares in the area. So providing social emotional learning, addressing any behavioral concerns that are going on in those settings, whether that's at daycare, childcare, early Head Start, preschool, really just finding those areas to make sure children and their needs are being addressed for their mental health. And that also includes working with parents at home if there are behavioral concerns that they just need some extra support with. And so that's something we at North Range provide, and that's something I and my team provide. And so today I'll be taking the time to talk with you about early childhood, stress in early childhood, just what that means for development of children, and some strategies for building resilience, which is something that will come later on. So thank you again so much for being here and just taking the time to be with me this morning. So the first thing that I wanted to get talking about is just what is stress in the life of an early child. A lot of times what we think of as stress, we're thinking of those really big things like what's going on right now in the world with COVID, or thinking about really, hard, challenging things that people go through of, loss of a family member, divorce, job changes, all those things that can be really stressful in their own way that we think of as kind of, in the words of bad stress, a really bad stressful thing. And that definitely has an impact on children. But it's also important to consider when we're, and I'm here talking with you this morning, that things that we consider good can be stressful too, like having a new family member, having a new baby sibling, starting school, changing school. Things that we think of as some really good things can sometimes be really, really challenging for children to handle too. Stress is anything that has an impact, that changes our normal day-to-day life, and that's something that can really have an impact on us. In children, it comes out differently than it might for an adult. For an adult, we have the awareness in our body of what stress feels like. We can tell like, oh, I'm getting a headache, or my stomach's really upset, whatever that may be, or we can just identify that we're feeling stressed. But for children, they often report things that are different. They might be more attached when they're getting dropped off at school, that they don't want you to leave for work in the morning. Or they report, they're like, oh, my stomach just really hurts, or I feel really sick. Those things that we often don't talk about as adults, but children, that's really how they express that stress, for the good things and the bad things. And stress can really have a huge impact on a child's life if they're living in stress. Everyone kind of goes through times of stress, and that's what we're talking about with resiliency, that resiliency is when we encounter a stressful experience and we're able to work through it, find ways to overcome that, and feel that in some way we are stronger for facing that stress than we were beforehand. But for children, that can be a harder skill to learn because they're so young, and if they're in that stressful situation for such a long time, that impacts how their brain looks and sees the world. And so a lot of what children are going through when they're young is really just huge amounts of growth in their brain and what they're learning. And that's what we want them to learn, those really critical skills of problem solving, decision making, meeting other people, learning how to be with others. That's such a huge skill that we learn when we're in our early childhood, before we're at the age of 6. And when we're in a stressful state, when things at home are really stressful right now with we're not sure when we're going back. Life looks so much different than it did before. Our summer looks so much different than it did before. We can't go swimming or go to places we used to go, or go on our vacations that we might, or just, our day-to-day is so impacted. And so children, when they're in that mode all the time, and not just, stress here and there, when they're stressed all the time, it really impacts their brain, because their brain just starts to focus just on getting through the day. Sometimes that's really all that they're at. They're just trying to get through day to day. And so their body's not letting them focus. They might have a hard time in, preschool. They're not able to sit at the dinner table, things like that. that's just their brain's way of, I'm just trying to get through this moment. I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed. And we all can relate to that. It just comes out looking different. And so what that is for children is it can also look different in a lot of ways. Some kids, when they're in a stressful state, they can kind of get really alert, what we might call hyper alert, where they jump at little noises. They're looking around a lot, seeing what's going on. They're always anxious and worried that something else might come up. And that's quite one way that comes across as a very anxious, kind of high movement type of response to stress. And then some people are very on the opposite end, where they seem withdrawn. They sit by themselves. They don't really want to talk or be around anyone. They seem kind of just quiet and shy and withdrawn, as I said. And those are two very different responses, but it's both stress at the heart of it. And we're not necessarily one or the other. It can be both. Some days you've experienced where you're really high alert, high stress, and some days you're just so drained and tired and you just want to take a break. And children go through the same thing. And so just to kind of go over all of that was just stress. And that's what children can go through sometimes. It's a very natural thing, but it's something we want to work on. And that's the other part of what I'm going to talk about today, is just that thing I talked about of resiliency. So resiliency, as I said, is just our body and our brain and us being able to encounter these stressful things and find ways to make meaning out of them, find ways to feel that we can overcome them, just feel that as a result of this stressful situation, we are stronger than maybe we were before. And it's not something that you have or you don't. It's something that can always be built and grown, and it's something that's a lifelong process. So what I'm going to be talking about is with the goal of building resiliency in children, but part of that is building resiliency in adults. That's so huge for all of us to remember too. That it's not just the children, it's us too that need to focus on these things sometimes. That we want to be there for ourselves, that we're in this stressful time too. And part of what resiliency research has found is that the most important and critical thing that we can have to be resilient is having a connection with someone. And for children, that's having a connection with an adult that's loving and responsive and caring, and that they feel supported by, whether that's a parent, a teacher, a caregiver. Anyone can be that person for a child. And it's just having that connection with them, being there, listening to them, loving them. That's so huge to building resiliency. And part of that is that responsiveness. So having responses to a child. So like we talked about a bit earlier, about some children might be showing some really hyper alert behaviors as a result of stress. And so having, a response to that is trying to just meet them in the middle. So just trying to get them to a place where that you can sit with them, help them calm down, just be with them sort of quietly and bring them down from that really alert phase and let them know that you understand that they are, they're stressed. I understand that you're worried that something else might come or something else might happen, but I'm here to do that stress for you and to watch out for you. I'm here to make sure you stay safe. And also reassuring them of what you are doing that is helping them feel safe. So, right now everyone's worried about everything going on with COVID. So saying, to keep you safe, I'm washing my hands, we're washing our hands, we're wearing a mask, whatever those steps may be, giving children a way of knowing what it is that safety means right now can be so huge. And then on the other side, for children who are more on that kind of withdrawn, drained feeling of stress, a lot of what you're doing is a lot more engagement. So kind of trying just to bring them to the balance, not wanting to make it seem like you're trying to make light of what they're going through or trying to get them out of it. It's okay for them to sit in that and for you to sit in them with that, but being engaging, sitting and just talking about other things that are going on, what the weather's like today, what they see, the clouds in the sky, just drawing their attention to their awareness around them, that it's okay that you're there with them. And that connection is so, so, so huge. And part of that connection, what I'll talk about for a little bit more on the brain, is just a lot of that comes from what we call mirror neurons. So those are parts of our brains that help us as humans connect to one another. It's not, something you learn, it's just something we're all born with. So the idea of it is You can look at someone and just by seeing what they're going through, you understand and you might actually act in the same way. So thinking about a time maybe that you saw someone reach out and maybe touch a hot stove, and you might have noticed your hand jerk back right away, or you said ouch, or whatever that may be. That's our brain working those mirror neurons, seeing that, oh, I can relate to what that person's going through without having to think through the steps of this person's going towards the stove, they're reaching out, their hand touched it, their hand moved back, oh, that must be hot. Our brains just know right away. And so part of the important part of resiliency is using that connection and that mirror neuron to connect with a child. And one easy in a word, one way to do that is to connect with a child. So get down on their level, whether they're, really high stress or just withdrawn, and see what they're doing. So maybe, for example, a child's sitting and kind of their heads in their crook of their arm, they're kind of covered up, they're not really looking. What you can do is just tell them, oh, I see your hand doing this, and use your body to model what their hand is doing, not using words. But what that'll do is show the child, I'm noticing you, and I'm noticing what you're doing, and then they'll look up to see what your body is doing because they want to notice that as well. And when they do that, when you say, oh, I see your arm is doing this, and they look up, just make sure to grab the eye connection. And when you have that, just take a deep breath in and out, and that's those mirror neurons working. That's what it'll do, is help the child take breaths on their own. If they see you taking a breath, those parts of their brains will work and they'll say, oh, I needed to take a deep breath. And once you have that connection, that's when you can start really listening to them, talking to them, just being with them is so important. And now for some other ideas on how to specifically build resiliency when you're not in a stressful state, when you're not just taking it through moment by moment, second by second. 'Cause sometimes that's what you need to do, and that's okay to just be in that moment, just do what you need to do. But some other ideas of building resiliency are just having, really great conversations with children, giving them space. If they want to talk, they may not want, but giving them that opportunity to either talk or play or draw, whatever's going on for them, and you being there in that moment with them lets them know that you'll be there through the ups and downs, as you always will, because you both love each other so much. Another thing is to have an identified person that they can talk to. If you notice they're kind of shy around you or they don't really want to say things to you, have a person and say, I understand, some things are hard to talk about with me. Let's find someone who you can talk about things with, or who you can be with. You can always trust this person, and letting them know that it's okay if there are other people that they want to go to as well, and that you'll always be there kind of as a home base, that you'll always be there to listen. Some other things are just having, limits and boundaries. They can be hard to enforce, but children really thrive off of boundaries and limits and knowing what's okay and what's not okay. It gives them a sense of security. So not having harsh boundaries, but very loving boundaries of saying, at this time we go to bed, or at this time we have dinner, and you sit at the table at dinner, and kind of talking them through what those are and giving them room to talk back about, it's hard for me to sit still sometimes. Would it be okay at dinner if I got up and walked around the table? Giving them that chance to talk about it, plan things out, use those problem-solving skills, so that way they can get through and they can know that their voice can be heard and they can use their words and people will listen to and understand them. 1 second, I'm going to take a little drink here. Another thing that can be so huge is to normalize and validate that people make mistakes. So that could be naming your own mistakes. If you accidentally drop something and it breaks, you can normalize that and say, oh, I'm feeling sad that I dropped that, but that's okay because I can pick up the pieces and I'll put it away and maybe I'll fix it later, or if not, I'll just have to get something new. Mistakes can be hard for us to learn about, but the earlier we teach them as children, the earlier we understand that learning is a hard process, that it's growth, but growth can be painful sometimes. We make mistakes, but the most important thing is to normalize that that's okay. Everyone does it, but we unfortunately tend to get in our own head and don't think about that. And then another thing is building empathy. So looking around, maybe playing some games. If you see, you're just walking around and see, oh, I wonder what that person's feeling, or I see that person, what do you think they're going to do today? Just having an awareness of others is really critical for us to build empathy and understanding, so that way we can have empathy for ourselves. And now I'll go into some more just ideas around some protective ideas to build that resiliency, to understand that it's a hard process, but there are things that we can do to help build that skill. So one of them is having a hero. So having someone that you look up to that has the same values that you do, that is who you want to be. And for children, that could be a superhero, that could be a parent, that could be anyone, someone in a movie, but it can just be someone that they want to be like when they grow up. Because when we have that role model, we have something we can work for. And then we can think about, things are hard right now, but remember in that movie when, maybe it's Spider-Man, they love Spider-Man, when Spider-Man was, he was losing that fight, but he found something to help him. That can be really huge to bring in something that they love and that they can relate to. Another idea is having a refuge, so someplace where they can feel safe, where they can feel if they want to be alone, they can be alone, just somewhere where they can feel safe. If that's somewhere in their house, if that's with a person, whatever that may be, identifying that, and then having that available to them to say, maybe you just need a little break, maybe you just need to go somewhere where you feel safe, and having that spot be always available to them lets them know the world is safe for me. The next one is having a solitude. So a similar concept, but having a place where they can go to and just be peaceful. Maybe it's where they can go and express themselves. They can mash with Play-Doh, they can scribble with crayons, they can use finger paints, they can be as messy, as clean as they want to be, but they have that place of peace, but also of control, because sometimes that can be what they're struggling for in a stressful place. We don't always have control. And so doing that can give us that sense of, this is my solitude, this is where I can be me, and this is where I want to be in this moment. And that can be huge, and it's different for every child. And then you can also give them a voice. So whether that's literal, of they can go sing, they can journal, they can draw. For the younger kids, it just might be babbling, but listening to them, listening to what they're saying, validating all the things that they're saying to you, giving them that sense that they have a voice. And if that is, singing, getting into an expressive art, that's great, or just giving them the chance to talk is so huge, because we need to feel listened to and heard. And then the last one is finding a sense of purpose, and that just gives us meaning in our lives, and that's different for a child, but it can be something as simple as, you're such a great helper, you help clean up after dinner, and just validating that they are so important, and not just for what they're doing, but for who they are as people. That we want to give praise, we want to give praise for the things we want to see and that we're proud that they are doing. So if that's being a good helper, if that's that they're very kind, or that they play really well with other children, or they, find children who don't maybe have friends and they play with those. If they share whatever those specific traits are, really praising them, because that gives them a sense of what they should be proud of, that they have really great things in them, because everyone does. It's just so important to name that for them, because they might not know that. They just might know, I'm a good kid, but when you praise the really specific things they're doing, it lets them know, this is what I'm doing. This is why I feel so good. And that's so important, because then they can give that to others as well. And that's kind of how resiliency works, is we give to others in our community by giving each other hope and support and reaching out a hand. Resiliency isn't necessarily a thing we build in ourselves, it's a thing we build in others. And even for young children, the adult is the one caring for them and building those skills, but they can also help later on in life, They're setting the foundation for them to be able to build those skills and then be able to give those to others as well. And so what I just want to wrap up with is really thinking about you as an adult, because I've talked so much about children, but the really important thing as well is that you are taking care of yourself. That's how you can build resiliency during these times of making sure you're taking care of you. You've got so much going on for you, maybe you have children, and it can be so hard to see the forest through the trees, but it's really, really important to take care of you, because with that, like I said, the connection is the most important part. So make sure that you are, if you need to get physical activity, sometimes we just need to stretch or go for a walk. If you're making sure you're getting your needs met, you're eating, you're doing your self-care, you're taking breaks, whatever that is so, so, so important. So that was all that I had. I know that was kind of a lot, but if you or anyone you know would like more information about the services we offer for young children and family, please call Family Connects. You can reach us at 970-347-2120. Our crisis support services are also always available for behavioral health emergencies. You can walk into the crisis center at 928 12th Street, that's in Greeley, and you can also call 970-347-2120, or you can text TALK, T-A-L-K, to 38255, and you can also call our warm line at 970-347-2359 if you just need to talk. So thank you again so much for spending your morning with me and taking a break with us. We hope to see you for another coffee break soon. And in the meantime, please make sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and remember that we're always here to help. So with that, thank you so much. I hope you take care of yourself this Friday and this weekend, and we'll see you for the next one.